Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. With just 10 days to go until the Iowa caucuses, former frontrunner Newt Gingrich has seen his support drop in the state amid a barrage of negative campaign ads. The latest Real Clear Politics poll average has him sinking to third place behind rivals Mitt Romney and Ron Paul. The former House Speaker acknowledged this week that the race in Iowa is, quote, a real mess. So can he come back? Let's ask Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, editorial board members Jason Riley and Dorothy Rabinowitz, and Washington columnist Kim Strassel. So, Kim, what's happened to Newt Gingrich in Iowa?
Well, he's getting piled on, as you said. And so I think what you're going to see over the next week is a much more aggressive Newt Gingrich. You're going to see him going after his rivals the way they have him. He's promised to be a positive campaigner, but he's going to try and highlight some of their weaknesses. He went over after Ron Paul this week on foreign policy. He's going to try to play to his strengths, in particular on growth questions and tax reform policy. And he's going to try and bolster his ground organization there.
Dorothy, what do you think is working against Gingrich? I mean, why is what attacks specifically are making a dent?
Well, the Fannie Freddie and the flip-flopping, everybody's accused of flip-flopping.
On cap and trade, for example, meeting with
and everything else.
Nancy Pelosi.
That's right. And then there's this general vague thing about his background and, you know, his family life. It's insinuated. But, you know, he has a very positive view for Newt and for everybody else. And he believes that this race, I think he believes that this race is going to be clarified and that all of those voters who went to Santorum, and they're going to be his. They're not going to go to Romney.
Clarified how?
Well, he's going to be the Southern conservative as opposed to the Massachusetts moderate. And that's what he's going to be presenting.
Kim mentioned strategy going forward. The question is there enough time left to implement that strategy? Newt Gingrich spent Wednesday and Thursday of this week in Virginia. Why? Because he needed enough signatures to get on the ballot there. He already missed the deadline in Missouri, almost missed it in Ohio. Newt's got an organizational problem here. He's thought he could fly off the debates, flashy performances, but you still need a ground game. His problem is largely organizational at this point.
The verities of politics, presidential politics, money, which he hasn't had enough of to respond to those attack ads. Negative advertising, which Mitt Romney and Ron Paul have been pounding him. Mitt Romney through the super PAC that is not affiliated formally with Romney, but everybody knows is supporting him. If you don't have the money to respond to those ads, they work.
But Paul,
they not only work.
Oh, sorry.
Newt's done. He's toast. Okay, he's finished. These ads are intimidating and driving away potential contributors. They're just going to leave Newt Gingrich out in the desert to die now. And I want to add that this judge thing that was so controversial in the past week.
His proposals for judicial reform and taking on the judiciary and saying the executive and the Congress, for example, Congress should subpoena judges.
Why did he do that? I think he did it to raise money on the internet. You take these red meat subjects, you throw them out there, people start sending you small contributions. Most of his support has been from small contributors, but it was a two-edged sword because he ran the risk of bringing the establishment down on him, and that's what happened.
But Dan, I think that it may be working a bit because there is a certain confidence in the Gingrich campaign that he's going to be, by the end of the month, having enough money to equal whatever John McCain had at this point in the race.
So he'll be able to fight back on the airwaves in Iowa, so he says. Well, Kim, what have we learned about Mitt Romney this week? Anything in particular about his campaign? I mean, he sat back and said, you know, Newt, if you can't take the heat, get out of the race because Obama's going to be much worse than anything you're getting now.
Yeah, that he just keeps going and going. He's got an excellent strategy that way. As you said, all the money that he spent raising earlier in this race has now come very much in handy. It has allowed him to go after his rivals. He's also played Iowa very carefully in that he didn't put too much emphasis on it. He made everyone know that New Hampshire was his big focus, and that way if he didn't do well in Iowa, it wasn't necessarily a killer like in 2008. And yet behind the scenes, he's been doing a lot of organization and keeping himself in Iowa, and he could well do to pull out a victory.
Romney obviously wants to win Iowa, Jason, but the second best thing would be a Ron Paul victory in Iowa for him, because he wants to knock out Gingrich. That is, Romney wants to knock out Gingrich, who he thinks is a more serious contender, and he believes that if Paul wins Iowa, it'll be a flash in the pan because he can't possibly win the nomination.
Yeah, we met with Romney, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, met with Romney earlier this week, and he was asked about whether this 25% ceiling he seems to have is a problem, and he basically said he sees it as a floor. He said there's a lot of people still in the race. Once the primaries start, the field will narrow, and the fact that he's been able to maintain a relatively high level of support, albeit a limited one, is a good thing, and he can only go up from there and expects to.
Yeah, well, Jason, you remember he did not look exactly happy when this issue was raised.
No.
So when you talk about, he has a very visible thin skin, and it's very quickly, it erupts. And
but we've been making this point. Organization usually trumps everything. The fourth primary is in Florida. He has a monster organization waiting down there. It's a big media market. I think he's probably going to throw it at his opponents down there, crush them, and from there just take off into the other primaries.
Kim, briefly, could we see a surprise in Iowa with, say, Michelle Bachmann or Rick Perry or Rick Santorum maybe breaking through better than anybody thinks?
There's been a lot of talk about this recently. There's been some evangelical support coming to Rick Santorum. People have wondered if there could be a late surge. I think if there is a surge, it propels them simply up into maybe third or fourth place victory rather than dead last. But I don't think you see someone coming all the way from behind to win it.